Trayvon Martin the year before, the hour when many young black people realized something must be done and that they were the ones to do it. Against this backdrop, the Millions March sought to harness and direct the outrage that, by the end of 2014, had all but boiled over. As 23-year-old lead organizer Sid Nichols put it, "We want people to shut down their cities for justice. We are continuing where the freedom fighters of the civil rights movement left off. We are a new generation of young, multiracial activists willing to take up the torch, and we're not going to stand for this anymore." Continuity was essential to how these organizers understood their mandate. Nichols's words, along with the broader description of the collective's aims, suggested an ambition that surpassed the spectacle of a single march or the potential catharsis of staging a day of anger. And her tone, her reference to freedom fighters and the civil rights movement, and her stated willingness to take up the torch, Nichols pointed to a prolonged and slower-moving process linked to centuries of black political struggle and striving, a theater of battle they were now preparing to enter. The history of this struggle and striving represents the narrative arc of black politics, thought, and culture, its political development, fueled by generational trauma and the creativity that emerges from everyday survival, connected across political time and geographical space. It's not by chance that around the day of the march, a group of organizers, many of whom played central roles in sustaining the Ferguson uprising, gathered elsewhere in New York City. With the rebellion at an end, their goal was to discuss ways to continue working together and develop a more cohesive front to challenge anti-blackness and its far too often deadly effects. Something was brewing. To quote the widely used description of black protest at that juncture, Nichols and these black organizers were talking about a movement, not a moment. How, why, and on what terms the movement would assert itself, what forms, and which domains, and with which lessons from the past, is the subject of this book. When Black Lives Matter emerged in 2013, few anticipated the seismic role it would play in giving form and coherence to the most consequential and wide-reaching black-led mobilization the United States has seen in decades, to say nothing of the many mobilizations that have taken place around the world. Since then, the hashtag-turned-rallying cry has helped solidify and spread a renewed, insurgent orientation toward black politics, protest, and political thought, chiefly, but not exclusively among younger black folks. To Build a Black Future examines the character and consequence of this insurgency, a political cultural formation anchored by the assertion that all black lives should and do matter, despite centuries of systematic devaluation and erasure. A dynamic and multimodal movement that operates from a threefold premise, underscoring its political culture. We must regard black pain, champion black joy, and practice a radically inclusive ethics of care. But where to begin? The question is less obvious than it may seem. We know that movements don't emerge out of nowhere, even if they sometimes take us by surprise. Instead, movements are made, and their making, to borrow from Michel Rolph-Trouillot, is often a story within a story, so slippery at the edges that one wonders when and where it started and whether it will ever end. This slipperiness is particularly true of black-led movements and for black people more broadly, given the uneasy balance we often strike between a violent past that remains present and a present that, by definition, must in some way escape the past. Terror, or the potential for it, defies temporality. The racially motivated slaying of 11 people, 10 of whom were black, by a white supremacist teenager at a grocery store in a predominantly black neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, could have as easily occurred in 1922 as when it happened, May 14th, 2022, 100 years later. We would do well to bear the familiar warning in mind as we wander this mortal coil. Objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. This message of caution captures what it means to live in the wake of slavery and colonialism, what it means to inhabit an anti-black world, a story within